Please let me see your ticket stubs for the double-edged double bill. This week, we witness the wackness of Dear Evan Hansen, to say the fucking least. Each week, Adam Thomas and Thomas Mariani will come to the table to discuss the randomly selected yin and yang of a double feature. Then, both will have to pick a number between 1 and 10 in order to seal their fates for the next episode. One will have 2 good movies, the other 2 bad ones. Let the chaos begin. I am Adam Thomas, and hey everybody, I just got done going to truck school.
And I am Thomas Mariani here, waiting through a window.
Wow, you sounded just like him.
Yep. That's the curse. Like the one person I can imitate musically is Ben Platt.
Yeah, that's pretty awful.
Yeah, unfortunately. But welcome everybody to the Double-Edged Double Bill, where every week Adam and I cover a good and a bad feature we picked at the end of the previous episode, based around a topic. And the topic for this week, and is actually interesting kickoff to a themed month we have here, called Revember, in which we are revisiting topics we have done previously, just because it timed out to where most of the topics of the month were ones that kind of match something. Like, for example, coming-of-age films matches up with a couple titles coming out this award season in November with Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans and Armageddon Time from James Gray. So, along with this topic, we'll be visiting a bunch of others, because we did this a couple years ago where we talked about Hunt for the Wilder People, and Adam's favorite movie of all time, Deuce is Wild.
Best movie ever. So many people love that movie. So many people saw it in the theater, too.
Not only love it, but can recognize it by that name and have specific memories related to that title that is not generic at all.
Nope, not at all. It's great. It's great.
Yes, but you can go back into the archives and hear that lovely episode. But we are here to talk again about coming-of-age films, which, like we said previously, it's an interesting genre just to kind of go back to, reminisce about that point where, people transition from childhood to adulthood. It's a fun genre worth revisiting.
Especially, you got to figure of my era, too. The 80s Amblin era and the John Hughes of it all and all that. There was just a ton of coming-of-age movies coming out. Most of them are still pretty great.
Yeah. Some of them are.
I said most, not all.
Yeah, for sure. But we're here to talk about 2 much more recent films in terms of our picks. Adam, because at the end of our last episode, we did a random picking. We came up with your good pick of The Wackness, and my bad pick of Dear Evan Hansen, both of which, came out within the last, 20 years or so. So let's go ahead and jump into our features then. First with your good pick of The Wackness.
Yeah, man.
It's summer of '94 and I'm sweating fresh to death in NYC.
Get into this.
What's up, man?
Seth, what up?
You sell ISIS?
That's my cover.
How does it work?
My occupation takes me to exotic locations like Brooklyn and Queens.
Don't let Giuliani see you.
That's how I met my shrink. How much you need, man?
You're the one who needs the sun.
My life sucks.
Has this got something to do with Kurt Cobain?
You got what I
Surely there's someone, Luke.
Yeah. She just wants to be friends.
Who is she? Does Stephanie know her? Make her like you.
You're a virgin?
No. Nah.
I think it's time for our first lesson.
Summertime.
So The Wackness came out August 1st, 2008, from director-writer Jonathan Levine. Why don't you go ahead and, because this was your pick, why don't you describe a bit of The Wackness, give us a basic plot synopsis, and then, give us your thoughts upon revisiting, because you mentioned you'd seen this around the time it came out, but not in a while. So,
Right.
Go ahead and divulge.
Okay, so The Wackness takes place in the summer of '94 in New York. Hip-hop is really sort of exploding onto the scene, and it follows this young kid, played by Josh Peck, who's a weed dealer, and he's sort of trying to navigate through his life. He doesn't really have any friends. His only friend is a psychiatrist that he pays with weed, and he's really trying to find a girlfriend. And his parents, he doesn't have the best home life and all that. So it's kind of like his tale of sort of finding himself during this one summer that's got like a crazy heat wave. All his friends are gone. It's the summer before he leaves for college, and it's sort of his story along with the psychiatrist story, who's played by Ben Kingsley. I saw it when it came out. I didn't see it at the theater. I don't think anybody fucking did, to be honest. But I really, really enjoyed it. And upon revisiting, I still got a lot of enjoyment out of it. The soundtrack is great. There's some great supporting characters and performances in this movie. I think it's still a really solid movie.
I hadn't seen this before. I remember when this came out, though, because I was especially drawn by the fact that you mentioned Josh Peck, who before this had a lot more, so it was like a kid actor who had appeared in a lot of like Nickelodeon things, particularly like Drake and Josh show and the Amanda show, stuff like that. So I remembered him from my childhood, and this was, I believe, around the time where he had gotten very thin, because he was a bit, a bigger guy when he was a kid, and he really thinned up around, I think it was like the last season of that Drake and Josh show, which I was not watching Nickelodeon really at that point. And I was like, oh wow, this is interesting. I'd like to see, Peck this is definitely his sort of, we talked about this phenomenon before many times, of kid actor wants to show off like, yeah, I'm an adult, so I'm going to play a kid who deals weed and is about to go to college, because I'm not on Nickelodeon anymore, baby. It's very much that kind of performance, I would argue. But I didn't see it until you picked it for the show, and it's all right. I think that's the thing, is that I don't have a huge amount to say about it. I think there's, this trouble I think I find with it, where it definitely is trying to be sort of this like coming of age story about this kid, about him having that transition from, like I mentioned, adolescence to adulthood. But I think it struggles a lot with trying to have like some of that authentic, sort of emotional grounding for the movie, but then also it veers very heavily into like sort of wacky hijinks at several times. I don't think it quite works. I think Levine's done a better job of that, I think, since this, because he also did stuff like 50-50 and The Long Shot, even Warm Bodies, which is very weird, like horror comedy. But I think he usually has a pretty good balance in like having fun, silly shenanigans happen while having a strong emotional base for what's going on. And I feel like this one's a bit more wonky. I overall still thought it was watchable, it was fine, but I think it definitely feels like an early film from a guy who would do much better.
Oh no, it definitely is that 100%. I mean, it's pretty hollow. I mean, it really is. There's nothing really sort of, I don't want to say fleshed out, because I don't think that's the case. It's kind of, like you said, a little bit tonally all over the place. It's wacky, crazy fun, then it's dead serious family drama, then it's young lover loses his virginity sort of drama, then he's a drug dealer, he has no friends. It's kind of all over the place in a not very long movie. I mean, it doesn't even hit 2 hours. But I will say, to me, the shining point of the movie, at least for me, I honestly feel like Peck and Kingsley had really good chemistry. Like they were fun together. Kingsley was fun in it. He is wacky. Well, to me, if they would have leaned more into sort of that silly hijink stuff, it would have worked more. It's just too half and half.
I think I would have preferred if it leaned more into just like the scenes where like they're actually sort of like talking to each other in their sessions, quote unquote. I think are the most fun, where like the wackiest element of it is like, oh, Ben Kingsley pulls out a bong. I think like my least favorite section of this whole movie is the whole like bar sequence, where they bring back the silliest character with Mary-Kate Olsen, who pops up as like 90s hippie girl. The scene earlier on where she's introduced, where Josh Peck and Olivia Thirlby run into her, and she's like, oh yeah, you look a lot like Jason Priestley from 90210, and I just went to a Fish concert and met this guy who's playing bongos. Like, is this that 90s show? Is this what this is? What the fuck is this bullshit? This is so rough. And then the bar scene later on, I think, is like where it veers too much into wackiness, as opposed to when I think it works best is when it's just like two characters kind of like being intimate with each other, and there is some sort of like funny element that's like maybe a bit more awkward than necessarily like wacky.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Honestly, the highlight of the thing for me is Olivia Thirlby.
Yeah, she's fucking great,
as the love
man.
interest. Yeah. And this was like her peak time, because this was right after Juno, where she played Elliot Page's best friend, and not too long after this was Dread. And it's a bummer. I think she's kind of like, she's been working. I looked at her IMDb. She's been working like TV and stuff, but I hadn't seen her in something in ages, and I forgot, like, man, she is so fun as like this character who definitely feels like, you know, there's a bit of wish fulfillment, like, oh, the perfect like the cool girl, to quote Gone Girl. Very much of just like, no, she hangs out with the dudes and she's totally like up for that. But I like the fact that the movie gives her a certain through line of like, look, hey, we're having fun here, but this isn't like a serious thing. This is a summer fling, and he gets too caught up in his feels. That's like the most sort of like coming of age heartbreaking stuff to me, is when he does like the awkward, like losing his virginity, and also the I love you, and she's like, whoa, dude, that's not what this is. Like, ooh, no, dude.
I know. I watched it today, and when that scene happened, I went, oh. Like I audibly went, oh no. Yeah, 100%. I mean, but then, you know, it gives us the great moment with him. He's like, you know, just stand there, don't say anything. Why? I want to remember this because this never happened to me before. You know what? Never had my heart broken. That's a great moment, great scene. And yeah, they have pretty good chemistry together too. Like he plays this sort of dopey, sort of kind of lost kid really well. I mean, he's really, really solid in this. But yeah, she just lights up the screen anytime she's on it. She's very pretty, but she's also unique pretty. And like you said, her character is great because her character's like, yeah, she's the cool, down to earth girl. She's down to drink beers and smoke weed in the park and making me a mixtape. She takes them out to Fire Island and they do what they do and all that. But she's just like, let's just enjoy this for what it is. Like, we ain't need to make this anything lasting. And
Because it's a summer fling, dude. We're gonna go to college in different places.
that's the best part about her character too. She's never not that. Like pretty much right from the get, like she makes her stance well known. It's the sort of uncomfortableness of it and the relatability comes on his end, where you're like, oh, dude, stop. She's already made it very clear. Oh no,
She
like,
set those boundaries, and you don't see them because you're young and stupid.
and right away, you know, here I'm gonna give you my number so you can call me sometime. But to like chill, yeah, to hang out, to be friends, you know, buddies, pals. And he's just like, I got her number, go. You know? And you feel bad for him too, though, because it's just like I think most people have been there, but of both sides, you know, where it's like somebody you're really into, just like friend zoned, 100% friend zoned. You're like, oh man, did that phone call he leaves? It's such an uncomfortable message. You know, I do love you. I meant what I said. Yeah, I do. I can't help it. I love you. You know what? Fuck you. Like he just runs the whole gamut of emotion, like right away, and I sympathize with him. I feel bad for him.
Yeah, even though obviously like it's friend zoning is obviously such a term where it's just like it's much more of like she set all this up very firmly. Like you were in a friend environment long before this.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, no. He didn't realize it. That's the problem.
Right.
And that's what makes it like, oh, buddy, oh no, oh, Josh Peck, or what's it, Shapiro. Oh.
But no, yeah, I think they do a pretty good job of establishing all that. And I think even when like she ends up having like the little fling she has with Aaron Yo,
Very young Aaron Yo. Yep.
Very young, yeah, right. Where it's more of like this thing where it's like, hey, look, I was just like having this fun thing. They never demonize her necessarily for that. A worse movie would do that. And I think they do a great job of like firmly establishing who she is, and she has like some regret about how it ended up. But at the same time, she's totally treated in the right of just like, no, like I totally get why she would kind of cut off contact at that awkward moment with him.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's no moment where and excuse my language, but you see it all the time in movies, and especially guy to female, but relationships when this type of thing happens. But there's no moment where he confronts her and calls her a fucking whore or any of that stuff, and she goes back to him, and which is great because that's not realistic.
No.
She might feel shitty about it at first or something, but then she smiles, she's like, all right, cool. Like, we're cool. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, they give her a lot more of an arc and sort of that kind of like dimensionality compared to like Famke Jensen and the relationship with like her and Kingsley, which I think feels much more like they sideline her. It's just like, oh my god, she's not that attentive to him or whatever, and they're like, they treat at least like Kingsley's very much like a flawed person, but at the same time, it's hard for me to get on board with a dude who states his motivation very clearly. It's like, I want to cheat on my wife, and I want to fuck it around.
You also get the feeling that maybe she has done that too. Like, it's a dead marriage.
Right.
There's no question. The marriage is way been over probably at this point for years. But yeah, I agree. There's not really much there.
The only time we get some kind of dimensionality out of her is when they talk about the time where, like, oh, we like stayed up all night on New Year's Eve and stored that coke that you found back from the 80s or whatever. And he's like, oh, what happened to us? And she's like, are you fucking kidding? Like, you know how that happens. You know what's happening here. This marriage is so fucking dead. But that's the only really thing we get, as opposed to him with like I'm like so despondent from my wife and I have all these like mixed emotions. It's all about like my conflicting character focused relationship, you know, even though it's like, I don't know, man, you seem kind of like a douche. A fun douche, but you're very much a douche still.
Well, you can't forget about the other great character of the movie in '94 New York, which is its own character.
Oh, of course, yeah. Also, Method Man with that terrible fucking Jamaican accent.
Yeah, that was a decision.
Not very method of you, Method Man.
No, your name is a lie, sir. But I will say the soundtrack is fucking great. It is a great early 90s hip-hop soundtrack.
The moment when I first heard, like, the Biggie song right from the get-go, I'm like, oh, this is why Adam liked this movie a lot. Because just, like, here, were you actually, like, the music coordinator on this film, Adam? Is that the secret?
I mean, I don't want to give it away, but possibly.
But no, it's a really great soundtrack. Yeah, I agree. It gives you more immersion into that time, I think, than a lot of the visual indicators do necessarily. Or even like the lazier stuff, like I mentioned, like the 90210 references, all this other shit. Like that element of like the soundtrack that's going on in the background works, and even that like Peck is getting Kingsley kind of into rap at the same time. I think like it's a fun bit. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they did also the constant references to Giuliani. You're like, yeah, we get it. It's,
oh wait, is this New York in the 90s? I wonder if people have thoughts on Rudy Giuliani.
All right, but I will say they did do a good job of like dressing down Times Square and stuff to make it look like kind of older and shitty. Like it looked enough like the period. Like it worked.
Right. Yeah, I would say so. Though I will say in terms of the look, I think probably my biggest like sort of filmmaking issue with this movie is that weird sepia tone filter they put over the whole fucking movie. I think it looks so like drab and dull. Like, I know they're trying to kind of make it look like almost like it's a nostalgic thing, like looking back in 1994, but it's like, dude, this looks just like shitty.
I mean, maybe it's that. I also got the idea that because it's summertime and it's hot and they're outside, like it's all sun washed. But yeah, you might be right. I don't know. What the fuck
I don't
know.
You can still have color. Like Spike Lee did that and do the right thing, but he had like color in his fucking movie.
Well, Spike Lee, Jonathan Levine is not.
What? No,
sorry.
I can't believe
No.
Shockingly.
No.
I guess, like, visually, the best sort of looking sequence is the bit where they are on the beach. I think that's where it does have a bit more of that vibrancy. And, like, even their sort of shower sex scene where he says, I love you. And has, like, that terrible... Like, I like how he kind of, like, makes it look idealistic and then has that cringy bit there just to me, like, oh, the illusion's broken. There's nothing here that works about this.
Like you said, I love you. Whoa, dude. And she walks away. And the look on his face, it's just, oh, he's destroyed. He is just absolutely destroyed. But they just really nerd him up too, though, man. Like, after they finally do have sex and he's crying. Like, you're like, oh.
My favorite bit is right before that, though, where he talks about just like, I haven't maybe exclusively had sex yet. It's like, you're a virgin? No. I just haven't, like, officially had sex yet.
Yeah, no, hell no. I just actually ain't had sex. And she's like, okay.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing I can say about Peck's performances. It definitely feels like a white kid in New York who was really into rap at that particular time. He feels very much like that, and for all of the positive but far more negative qualities of that.
Yes, no, he's absolutely that kid. Not even necessarily New York specific. I know people like this. I have certain family members who are still acting like this, and they're my age. Like, all right, time to grow up.
Right. But what do you think of Peck's turn here? Especially, like, we've mentioned the kind of thing of, like, oh, kid star graduating up to adult. Do you think he stands as one of the better examples of that in recent memory?
Yeah, I think he's pretty solid in it. I think, he's good. He's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. It definitely, at least, it's not as, like, say, exploitative or shallow as, like, a lot of young female stars have to go through that kind of thing. Yeah, it's very much more of, like, hey, you have, like, some sexual situations you get into, but they only see your shirt. Basically, dude, that's a
You see his
with your shirt
butt.
off.
You see his
Right,
butt.
that's true. You do see his butt, which I think is also a thing of like, which I get. It was just like, hey, I just got skinny. I want to show off that I have a butt,
Right.
and everything else like that. Good on him. Like you mentioned, I think him and Kingsley do have a really solid chemistry with each other. The movie's trying to have that connection point be very much like, oh, this like middle-aged man and this young man have very similar crossroad points where they're both kind of like lost in the city and they're trying to like kind of find some path for themselves and they just meet on those crossroads. I think there's a lot of like interesting elements to that. I think, like I said, like the scenes where they're kind of like talking one-on-one during the sessions, like when Kingsley does the whole thing about like, well, you need to mess up your life, get your balls sucked, to fall in a gutter, all that other shit. It's just like, it's silly, but like it's in a way that still works for like this would be an overzealous middle-aged man trying to like bring his sort of like lost youth to this kid. Kind of
Oh
thing.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
right, but at the same time, it's very much just about like, oh, you both aren't sadly too far apart from each other, and that's really sad for one person and kind of sad for the younger one.
Right. Right. Don't trust anybody who doesn't like Bob Dylan, and don't ever, ever trust anybody who says they don't like dogs. Don't ever trust people who say they don't like fucking dogs. I'm going into the ocean.
Another person, before we get to final thoughts, we should probably talk about is Ben Kingsley,
Yeah.
who obviously has an interesting career trajectory we've talked about many times, including just this year. He was also in, like, along with the Wackness stuff like Trans-Siberia and Elegy and The Love Guru. Like, this was peak, especially him, like, doing not just paychecks, but as many as he possibly could. He was, like, in 5 movies every fucking year for, like, around this time. How do you think this sort of ranks amongst the modern Kingsley performances?
Well, I mean, amongst the modern Kingsley performances, I think it's a pretty solid one. Maybe a forgettable one, but the thing about Kingsley is, I think Kingsley, when Kingsley wants to be on, he's fucking great. Like when he really is going for it, like a Pacino type. You know, when they're really going for it and they're really committed to it, they can be just wonderful. Other than that, you know, paychecks. You can't really fault him for it, but yeah, I think Kingsley's really solid, man. I mean, 8 years before this is my favorite performance of his ever in Sexy Beast. So,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, he's pretty fucking great. But
Yep.
yeah, when he's on, he's on. It's just, you know, they get complacent.
Right. But at the same time, yeah, I like this because you feel that there's this camaraderie, like I mentioned with Peck here, to where Peck said, like, even before this movie came out, that, like, Kingsley was his favorite actor of all time. So you can see that kind of reverence in Peck's eyes. And at the same time, you can see that Kingsley sort of respects that kind of, like, that appreciation that Peck clearly has for him. But at the same time is, you know, willing to kind of have, like, this kind of fun where it's like, look, I appreciate you being, you know, sort of this, you know, reverent kid, but at the same time, let's have some fun, let's bullshit around, let's do this, let's do that. And I think that works very much for the dynamic that the movie's going for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I fucking love that that's his fucking hat.
Yep, that's his
In real
hat.
life. That's Ben Kingsley's hat in real life. I love it.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think that's probably my favorite of sort of the wackier elements of this, which would get him fucking like disbarred or whatever from being a psychiatrist, but him actually helping out with the weed dealing, I think is like a cute sequence, a cute montage. It's just like, oh yeah, you should come by my practice and we'll help out. So how much marijuana can I sell you today? Like, that's cute. It's a fun.
Yeah, when he's dancing in front of one of Method Man's guys, like Bob Beckford, stop that. Okay, sorry.
Right. And I do like the little sort of coda of him ending up with the Jane Addams character, who also I think is my favorite of like the various weed customers.
Yeah,
I love
Eleanor,
Jane Addams
she's
in
great.
general.
Yeah, she's fucking great, dude.
She's so fucking great, and just how much she really wants to be like friendly with her drug dealer, like that type of person, and just like, we're gonna go.
Really wants you to listen to her music or understand that she was in a band.
Right, and then Ben King's just like, I loved your music. Oh my, I told him. And this is so. If anything, I wish that relationship was in more of the fucking movie because I think like they're very cute together.
Me too. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think there's potential here for this to be a great movie. I know there are some people who really love this movie, and I still think it's good. But is it one that I would necessarily revisit again? Probably not, unless it was with somebody who hadn't seen it and was interested. But I think, you know, it's fine for what it is. It's a good little independent movie.
Yeah, I mean, those sound like pretty good final thoughts unless you have anything else to add, Adam.
No.
For me, I thought it was like, a cute little movie. Definitely not a great one. Like I said, I feel like Jonathan Levine. This is him at an early stage, kind of doing a lesser version of what he would perfect, or at least do a much better job at with some of his later movies. But at the same time, yeah, there's some fun things. I think Peck's very good and Kingsley's fun. It's a very cute little movie in its own right. But I agree that I think it's one that I will. Of the sort of good picks we've had for the show in particular, I feel like it'd be one that will disappear quickly out the mind. I'm glad I saw it like 24 hours ago.
Oh, aren't you fucking cool?
Yep, I'm not whack at all, as the kids say, circa 1994.
I disagree strongly.
But anyway, let's talk about a much more whack movie, I would argue, Adam, with our bad feature here, Dear Evan Hansen.
Dear Evan Hansen, I wish everything was different. I've learned to slam on the brake. Wish I was part of something. I wish that anything I said mattered. Before I even turned the
There are a lot of people who feel like us.
I never meant to make it such a mess. I have to tell them.
So, Dear Evan Hansen came out September 24th, 2021. How a year has flown by since Dear Evan Hansen graced us with his presence. From director Stephen Chbosky, from writer Stephen Levinson, who had co-written the musical that this is based on with Benji Pasek and Justin Paul. This was sort of the musical that broke them out on Broadway in 2015, and then they would go on to write the music for La La Land and The Greatest Showman. So very poppy musicals that really attracted people. And, this musical was very successful on Broadway. It won 6 Tonys, including Best Musical, Best Score, and Best Leading Actor for Mr. Ben Platt, who reprises his role here for this film. That, despite this being a very popular musical, this movie was sort of critically reviled and became a massive meme because Platt, who was 27 when they filmed this, is playing the titular high school character. And that resulted in this movie sort of like big, massive failing. But, a year has come and gone. The dust has settled. I guess the question is, Adam, after a whole year, does it still live up to that terrible reputation it had?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, very much so. It's a very fucking bad movie.
It's very terrible. It's fucking terrible.
And this is saying something because, like, we've talked many times about our, differing opinions on musicals in general. You're usually not a fan. I usually am. But I think it says something that we both come to the mutually, shared opinion that this is so fucking terrible. So it doesn't really work for anybody.
I mean, to the point that, everyone knows we do movie nights and stuff. We literally said when we knew this was coming out on streaming, like, oh, we have to do a movie night for that movie. Because it's going to be bad. And it's one of the most fun I've ever had doing a movie night. Just because all we did was make fun of it the entire movie. And the thing is, I know the movie deals with very heavy subject matter and things like that, and it is there. But it's also handled so poorly. So ridiculously poorly. To where you can't help but laugh, even if it's to laugh at the offensive nature of a lot of it, or the really creepy gaslighting that happens. And just, there's so much wrong with the way this movie is presented and this story that you just, what the fuck is this? Like, what the fuck? The main guy that you're supposed to care about, he's a monster. He's a horrible human being. And again, buddy, you're clearly not 17 or 18 or whatever the fuck. Like, I know that shit, like, oh, guys in Greece were that age and whatever the fuck.
Which was something Platt literally said, like, his, like, response to when the trailer came out. Was like, look, hey, if I wasn't in the movie, it wouldn't get made. And plus, Grease happened. But the difference with Grease is John Travolta wasn't, like, attempting to woo, like, I don't know, around that time, like, Jamie Lee Curtis circa Halloween, where there's a clear age difference. It's like
Yeah.
Olivia Newton-John, who was around his age, and everyone else
Right.
looked like old teenagers, basically. That's fine. If that was the case, or if everyone looked around the same age as, like, younger, like, and you cast younger actors. Versus here, there are so many scenes where he's, trying to woo Caitlin Dever, which, even regardless of, like, all of the elements that are creepy in the story, like, and the fact that they aren't actually that big in age difference, there's like only like a 4-year difference, I think, in their ages. She looks so much younger, and there are so many scenes of him, like, luring over like he's a fucking Dracula, trying to...
It's like Abe Vigoda trying to get Anna Klumsky. Like, it's really fucking weird.
Would especially be weird now, given Abe Vigoda's been, like, dead for a decade, I think.
That's even worse. Yeah. He's on strings.
Which, to be fair, in this movie, it doesn't help that I don't think it's just Platt's age, obviously. I think it's also the way that Steven Chbosky shoots him in this movie. It's unsettling. It's just like the way it's lit, all the camera angles. They make him look so fucking bad, like even more so than he would if it was just him in like good lighting or good camera angles. They choose all his wrong angles.
His crying face is one of the most horrific things I've ever seen in my life. And then it's like the way they shoot him, he looks like he's got puffy face all the time, like he's like got way too much makeup on because he was on a bender, like a drinking bender overnight. Like he just
or like
doesn't
they're trying to
look
way
good.
Overcompensate to make him look younger.
Way overcompensate. This guy has so much makeup on his face, it's not even funny. Oh yeah, just walk with a little bit more forward head posture. That'll make me look young. Where like it looks like Nosferatu going up the stairs. Like it just doesn't. It doesn't work, dude.
I'm
It's
especially not helped by like Platt's decisions to do stuff like the hand gestures and all those other things that are
it's
trying to
so
like. I get what he's
bad.
going for in terms of it's trying to be like, oh, this is like a socially awkward kid who doesn't know what to do with his hands.
Yeah, it's his nervous tics or something like that. I get it.
Right. But the way that it ends up coming off is less that and more like a guy who does not know ASL, but is like, I'll wing some stuff with my hands, and people who can read sign language can get it, right? And anyone who looks at him just like, no, dude, this means nothing. What the fuck is this? Where he's just like during that one song where like they're sitting at the dinner table, and he's just like, oh, and I went up the tree, and then this happened here. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing with your hands?
And again, all right. So obviously we know the reason he climbed the tree now because he was going to jump. He jumped to try to kill himself. Okay.
Right. That's the big
Tragic,
twist.
awful. Yeah, dude, what a twist. But I think my favorite thing in the world about this movie is that he just tells everybody that him and the kid were out climbing trees together at the apple orchard, and everybody just buys it. That these two like 17, 18-year-old boys were just hanging out in the apple orchard, climbing trees for fun. No, you weren't. You fucking liar. Like if you said we were out there smoking weed, climbed a tree and fell out of it because you were so damn stoned. All right, I'll give you that. But just like, well, we want to see how high we can climb. Oh man, oh boy.
To be fair, I also don't believe that dude would smoke weed. Like, listen, that also would be a tell.
If he did, he would call it grass, and he wouldn't inhale.
Well, no, I mean, they make that joke at one point when they're doing, like, the dumb email song where it's just like, oh, you smoke drugs.
Yeah,
right,
right,
he
exactly.
writes out.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Right. 100% into that kid. I smoked some drugs and I had some malt liquor. Like, you're like, fuck you, man.
It's like a Budweiser. It's like a Bud Light.
It's a Zima. He's got a Zima with a Jolly Rancher in it. No, it's going to get me buzzed. The gaslighting shit, I mean, I can't address enough how disturbing and gross it is. Especially where, he's telling her all the stuff that he feels about her, but it was like from her brother's point of view, supposedly.
Well, yeah, because like the thing is, when this initially starts happening, if one, he looked like an actual kid, and two, it stopped at just, oh, these people really want to believe that this letter I wrote to myself as a therapy thing was actually from their son who they didn't have any contact with. Like, if that was the initial thing, it's like, okay, I could get, well, you would feel like this would, like, help them out and be beneficial if you were that kid. But one, he looks like he's fucking 30 or older. So it's like, no, dude, you would know better than to do that. And two, more importantly, even if it was a younger looking actor, the moment that song happens that you're referring to. The song where Caitlin Dever is just like, I didn't know anything about my brother, and we had a really tumultuous relationship. Can you tell me through an expositional song, Evan Hansen, about the things he said to you about me in private? And it's all the stuff from his letter because he's crushing on this girl, and it's all very creepy to the degree that if I was that sister, I'd be like, did my brother have a crush on me? This is really fucked up. What?
Is my brother hoping I get stuck in a dryer? This is fucked up. It's really fucked up.
Yep.
It's really fucked up. And the thing, again, I think you hit the nail on the head too. Yeah, of course, if this was something you tried to do because, this family reached out to him and it's a very crazy circumstance, and obviously he doesn't have that good of a home life, so, he fits in with them and it makes both of them feel better through mutual circumstance. All right, I'll give you that shit, fine. But then there's just so many things that make me like, I gotta get away from this fucking guy. The way he's laughing on the fucking roller coaster alone, I'd be like, all right, like, I'm done with this guy.
I'm getting off this roller coaster
Yeah,
mid-ride.
dude, stop this fucking stop this thing. He's going, this movie's terrible. I fucking hate it so much.
Another thing, just the staging of the musical numbers is like some of the laziest shit I've ever seen. Where, like, aside from that one, like, weird sort of black comedy number about writing the emails, like, most of these songs are staged with just people, like, sitting down on a couch or at a dinner table and, like, one person singing the other. Like, Evan Hansen sings, like, 85% of the songs. To the degree that's, like, are people, like, obviously in musical theater, it should be like, okay, like, this is him expressing his feelings and we're seeing it through a song versus, like... In this movie, the way it's staged is just like, is he just actually singing in the reality of this fucking movie?
100%. Like, is he just singing to Amy Adams right now? Like, they're sitting at dinner and this fucking guy over pot roast just starts busting out a song? Like, get the fuck out of my house, man. What the fuck are you doing? Like, yeah, 100%. Like, what did my brother think about me? Burst out into song. I'm like, oh, God. No. I can't stress enough how miscast. I understand, he was the role on Broadway and his dad's a big part of the production and all that stuff. Like, I totally get it. But if they would have honestly just cast the actor that played the brother as him and flipped the roles, it would have made more sense.
Right, and that guy I think is a much better actor based on like his few scenes, and even like the song that he gets, the dark comedy number where he dances and sings, like that's probably like the highlight of the music in the movie.
Yep, and he looks age appropriate, and it would make sense that the fucking Platt character would be sort of this bully and everything because he could be like, oh, he's been held back a couple of years and stuff, and like really get
many
because
years.
yeah, right, yeah. He actually used to teach here. It's weird. But yeah, don't you remember Principal Hansen? But yeah, it's so bizarre. It's so hard to even get into. Like, granted, I'm not a musical guy. We've already said that, and I've said it 1,000 times. But there are some that I'll be like, all right, cool. Like, In the Heights, got into it, liked it, loved it. Phantom of the Opera, as we talked about on the Patreon, love it. There are some that I can do. This is just instantly, once you introduce to him, I'm out. Like, I'm out of it. Because it's so unbelievable and so weird and uncanny and just kind of awkward. Where, I mean, I'm watching this grown ass man hang out with these high school kids singing about being in love with one of them. Like, it's just creepy.
Right, and like I watched some footage of like Platt on Broadway and stuff like that from like obviously like these shaky cam things that are on YouTube or whatever. And the thing is, from an extreme distance of most people on the Broadway stage, and with those particular lights that would be on Broadway, I can get how you'd be like, all right, I can believe this for now, for this like 2-hour-long musical or whatever. All suspension of disbelief is gone the moment you have a close-up on fucking Ben Platt's face for this. Not helped also just by the fact that, like, even as a musical fan, like, I have this problem with Pasek and Paul, their, like, songs. They're so just, like, generic pop songs translated as, like, musical numbers. But, like, the way all the songs are structured in the same fashion, where it's just like, let me sing like this, and then we'll keep singing, and then like the bridge that they keep fucking repeating of all these songs, or like certain words like in that fucking opening number, the whole like tap 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 tap, and they have to cut from each other side of it as he's fucking doing it to the mirror. It's so like all the songs are like gratingly forgettable.
Yeah, I mean the window one, which that's all the only reason I only know the word window. Like just because he says it so fucking weird. There's that one in
Oh,
truck.
truck. Oh, truck.
Oh, truck.
Oh, poor Julianne Moore.
Truck.
Clear.
Oh yeah, truck. I mean, Julianne Moore, they instantly age her by like 20 years that she's supposed to be this kid's mom. Like it's so bizarre. Like it's a weird Dr. Moreau situation happening. Like I just like she's this fucking guy's mom. Hey, what's up, Bob? Oh, we got any brown paper bags so I can make book covers?
but yeah,
I hate it.
I just feel so bad though for like her and Amy Adams and Caitlin Dever, who are trying so hard to make this work. Like they are trying against all odds to make this work as much as they can.
But I don't think he's not either, though.
Like, well, the thing is, they're trying, and I quite frankly, they at least feel like they're not overcompensating. That's the thing, is that they all are trying, and they have like the confidence because they're like actors who don't feel like they have to overcompensate for like, oh, I don't look like a teenager. As opposed to Platt is trying to a degree that makes it just uncomfortable in any scene. Like any scene where he's with these other like women or any of these other people in this movie, I am just fearing for the safety of his scene partner. It just feels like this guy is trying far too hard in a way where I'm like, is he dangerous? Maybe you should get away from him. Not helped by the character being, as we mentioned, awful. A Machiavellian monster man who does not deserve any happiness because he's a fucking piece of shit.
Yeah, he's a terrible, terrible human being. And I kind of wish that, he would go into a big windmill at the end and they'd set it on fire. Like, climb the
Even
windmill.
Karloff's Frankenstein would be just like, bad man.
Yeah.
Joining the crowd.
No, not young. No.
We belong dead. By which I mean you belong dead.
By we, I mean you. You fucking freak show. He wears baby blue and khaki all the time. Like, get the fuck. Oh, I can't.
Like he just walked out of fucking Bells with like the school uniform.
Or he's like, I'm gonna try to be Justin Timberlake on a budget.
Look at my curly hair, aren't I Justin Timberlake? Like the hair is also like, especially just like, oh man, you're trying really hard to hide that you have a hairline.
Yeah, and like if you've seen him, he does have naturally curly hair, but it just ages him again. It ages him so much. Like, dude, come on, do something with this kid. Shave his head, have close cropped hair. Like, it doesn't make sense. Everything they try to do to make him look younger makes him look older.
Or just makes him look like not even quite like a human being.
Yeah, it makes him look like he's from Polar Express.
There's an uncanny valley thing with it. That's very true.
There's an uncanny valley thing with Ben Platt, which is strange because he's a real man. But it's just like, oh god, I can't tell if I think he's supposed to be looking at me.
That's true, and just surrounded once again by like a bunch of people who look far younger than him, or even were like the adults. Like whenever he's in the scene with like Amy Adams or Julianne Moore, it's just like you're not too distant by comparison to everyone else.
Amy Adams, like he's the like
she's his older sister, basically.
Yeah, he's the washed-out punk brother who's back for Christmas. You know what I mean? Like they're just hanging out. Like, he doesn't look like, oh, you're in high school with my daughter? Yeah. I can't have sausage on my pizza because it gives me indigestion, Mom.
Well, and also like even with like the character, I think the biggest thing is that there are so many points when he's hanging out with that whole family, the Murphys. There are so many points where they could at least give us that, bridge of like, hey, even though he like obviously stepped into this with a horrible lie, he could like open up a bit more. Like there's the point where the mom says about like, oh yeah, Connor never got invited to any party, but I got this tie for him. It was bar mitzvah season, and just a small connection of just like, I also had, I didn't get invited to many parties. Or the stepdad later on, where it's just like, oh, your dad must be very proud to have a son like you. And he doesn't say anything about his dad being absent from his life. Anything.
You mean Danny Pino, the Latin god?
Yes.
Yeah, dude's so fucking Anyhow, yeah, no, I mean, good God. Completely. Like nothing. Not like, well, my dad, yeah, he's gone. I mean, anything. Say anything. Just like, I'll take your baseball. Fuck you, Evan. Fuck you, Evan. You piece of shit.
Right, and it's just like all of the stuff he's saying to them is just based on the lies that he creates about Connor. And it's the same thing with even, like, we haven't mentioned anything about the Amalda Stahlberg, like, fucking subplot, where it's just like, he has the one connecting point with her of just like, oh yeah, I take a lot of, prescription drugs as well. But it's like, that's like their one connection with each other. Then it's like, okay, how about I do a Kickstarter campaign so we can, like, make this whole entire, like, orchard dedicated to fucking Connor based on this whole lie. And then, like, she's so dedicated to that it's like, do you think this is gonna, like, stop any kind of teen suicide by just having this Kickstarter campaign work? Like, you're going really hard into this in a way that's, like, bizarre, quite frankly.
I know, and then it's like, she figures it out, and then...
Well, no, she initially kind of figures it out, and he's like, no, hey, look, here's proof, here's the letter, but don't show it to anybody. Okay, post it online, get the Kickstarter, like, over the fucking thing.
Oh, yeah. That shit blows it up.
Right, yep. He gets him, like, they get all this stuff and all this fame. Now the orchard's named after Connor, so everything's good now. There's no, like, they mention offhand, like, counseling, and then they never show one scene of anybody counseling about, like, a real issue. That's another big problem with this movie. Yeah. It brings up all these, like,
sociopathy, you mean?
Well, I mean, not that, in terms of more about, like, teen suicide risk.
Oh, okay. Well, because I was saying, if it's about Evan's a sociopath.
Well, to be fair, yeah, it would be an AA meeting of one. But then, like, they bring up all these issues about, like, oh, hey, like, teen suicide, which is obviously, like, a real tragic thing.
Yeah, it's awful.
It affects, like, so many people all the time. And it's like, okay, if you were going to bring up any of these issues, I'm fine with that, even in, like, a musical format. But the way that they end up, like, divulging it is through, once again, this huge lie that's construed. And there's not really that much consequence for anything Evan does.
No, he still graduates. All that stuff still happens. No, he's fine, man. He's fine.
He couldn't go to school that semester, so he has to, like, save some money for a year.
Oh, that's, like, man, what a bummer. Ooh. But yeah, that's I guess the real thing about this movie that really irks me too, is you go through all this shit. You go through this Frankenstein boy of a man creature exploiting this family, and there's tragedy and suffering and all of these things, and nothing really happens. He still gets to see his ex-girlfriend at the end, and the apple orchard is still named after the kid, and he's pretty much fine.
Yeah, there's no real consequence.
Not at all.
These horrible actions. And the thing is, like, if you're gonna do that, then either make this a black comedy, where you're in on the fact that this is horrible and upsetting, kind of like, I don't know, a much better movie than This World's Greatest Dad, which has a lot of similar themes, and does it in a completely straight, like, black comedy way that works perfectly for that movie. Or you play this straight, but you emphasize that Evan is a monster. Like, he's, like, all these actions are, like, Richard III level monstrous, awful things he's doing.
Terrible. It's terrible.
Right, but they try and, like, still make you sympathetic. We're just like, oh, I feel sad, and I also attempted suicide. It's like, well, that's a shame, man. But also, that doesn't excuse the fact that you're fucking awful to everyone, and you shouldn't have friends because you're a piece of shit.
Yeah, right, dude. He deserves nothing. He deserves to be alone after this type of shit, because look at how he acts with people. Like, he's a habitual liar. He has sociopathic tendencies. He gaslights, almost sexually abuses somebody because of the way he gets to where they are. Like, it's just gross. He's gross and disgusting, and I really hate him. And he's clearly not 18.
Yeah, of all, we're still recording this in October, everybody, and this is the scariest film I have seen so far this October.
Yep.
By a long shot. Dear Evan Hansen, a true monster for the modern age. Fuck Jigsaw. And fuck any other, like, 21st century era monster.
Fuck a Corey in Halloween Ends. Throw Evan Hansen in there.
That's true.
Just beats
He's just like in the Michael Myers mask, just like tapping on the window.
Yep. With with his cast. Do you want to slide it before I kill you? Go.
Though to be fair, if that were to happen, Michael in the sewer would have fucking murdered that guy
Just beat
instantaneously.
Beat the fucking polo off him right away.
It would have been that one scene from Halloween Kills, but it's just him instead of Michael Myers, and Michael Myers is in the crowd beating him up.
And everybody that got killed in Halloween Kills, it's just...
It's just multiple scenes of fucking Evan Hansen getting beaten.
Multiple Evan Hansen.
Oh no, that's the twist, is that he's like, there's multiple Evan Hansens. That's the horrible monster twist. At the end, there's an army of Evan Hansens waving through the windows. So yeah, this movie's fun, isn't it? We have
it's great. Yeah, it's great.
But I guess, Adam, before we get out of here, I'm curious. So obviously, you mentioned that we laughed at it so much. Would you call this necessarily a so bad it's good movie, or more of maybe the train wreck bad that we like talking about on the show, where it's just like every multiple bad decision that's going on could go wrong?
This is the train wreck. This is absolutely just a full train wreck. There's nothing really redeeming about this film at all. The music's not even good, nothing really, but it's almost one of those where you kind of want people to see it before you talk about it, because when you talk about it, people are like, I would never watch that. Why the fuck would I watch that? And so it's like, oh, okay, never mind. So you kind of want people to watch it so you can be like, am I right? It was fucking terrible. But I never want to watch it again. I'll tell you that. But I would love for new people who haven't seen this to watch it and then just confirm everything we said. I mean, we already know we're right. But I just want other people to shit on it with.
Right, you want people to prove that this exists, so you're not being gaslit by Evan Hansen like everyone else in the movie. Just like, no, see, this is real, right? This is all real.
Wait a minute. I did just meet a very tall, hunchback-looking fellow with a cast on his arm who was climbing the tree outside my house.
And waving through your window.
Right now he is. He's tapping at it. Hey!
Tap, tap, tap.
Tap, tap, taparoo. I have several apple orchards around my house. Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, God. I know what I'm dressing as for Halloween.
That's true. The Evan Hansen truly is like the legendary apple orchard tapper.
Evan Hansen's the new Leslie Vernon.
We need a documentary crew to document that he exists somehow.
Yes, absolutely.
We need proof.
Get that chick from Home Alone again to do it. I don't care.
But yeah, I would agree that it's way more of the train wreck bad, because I think there's definitely not, despite the fact that when we watched this together, we were having so much fun making fun of the movie. This is definitely not one that would necessarily be a laugh riot for everybody involved. Like, the only way you can really have any kind of enjoyment out of this is just being fascinated by every single weird step they take. Like, there's certain things we even mentioned, like the whole Jared character, who is like this guy who's the quote-unquote best friend of Evan Hansen.
Who just treats him like shit.
Right, who treats him like shit, and is like, hey, I'm a gay character, so I can make, like, weird homophobic jokes in the fucking one song. We're just like, no, they're totally not gay, bro. Which, to be fair, apparently, in the musical, he is not gay, right?
No, he's just a homophobic. He's a homophobe.
Right, yes. But, like, there are certain other things that, like, I'd heard about in the musical that I'm at least like, well, at least they dodged some of these bullets. I think this is just, like, a cursed thing, this musical. With stuff like, apparently, the Alana character was not nearly as sympathetic and more just, like, a vapid, Twitter-obsessed, kind of like social media person. And there would be more visions of Connor coming to Evan about, like, yeah, keep doing it, Evan. Keep doing all these things. And even at the very end, the big thing I found out recently, I'm like, oh, this is fucking baffling. The Murphys find out about everything that Evan Hansen's doing, and are like, we'll keep this to ourselves.
Hell yeah. Yeah, man, you don't need that. You don't want that public image blow up. Get the fuck out of here with this.
Well, even
garbage.
though he's responsible for it, because like that letter gets put out, and then for some reason everybody like starts bad mouthing the Murphy parents, and they dox them. Apparently, like their address is revealed online and shit like that.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, no, yeah, that's right. And everybody's like, oh, they're terrible people. No wonder Connor killed himself.
Even though based on that letter, the only thing that you would probably say is just like, does this kid want to fuck his sister? What is this?
Yeah, this movie fucking sucks.
Well, anything else to add, Adam, to that?
No, dude. I mean, I don't have a lot for final thoughts on either movie tonight, but this one, it's just, I only gave this movie, and again, I know we don't usually do ratings on this, but because on Letterboxd, I feel like if I leave it empty, it bothers me. So this is one of like maybe 5 movies that I actually gave a half star to, and I only gave it a half star just because of how much we laughed at it when we watched it. I mean, it's garbage. This is a garbage movie.
Yep, to the degree that I still remember a few years ago being recommended, like, oh, hey, Tom, you'd love this musical. Like, now that's like a fucking insult to me. That is like anybody who would like necessarily recommend this musical to you, that's a red flag.
That's a problem. There's something going on there. Yeah, there's something.
Right, they do not respect you as a person.
No, they think you're a fucking psychopath. You would identify with this, I think. Oh, really? I'll check it out. Jesus, what the fuck?
Right, which that's even just like the stage musical that removed several things we talked about that like could have made this potentially even more batshit bizarre than it is. Like even the sequence where like he reveals that he had feelings for Caitlin Dever originally took place in Connor's fucking bedroom.
The only way that would be worse if it was at the funeral. That's still pretty bad.
Right, both of those are still pretty bad. But at the same time, yeah, this movie is only fascinating just in terms of like how infamously bad decision was to like do many things, but the main thing of course being Ben Platt starring in this movie. And it's, not helped by Platt's response, but also even the musical and the movie both produced by Mr. Mark Platt, his father.
Yeah, so because without me the movie would be made. Yeah, no shit.
Maybe it shouldn't have been. How about that? Maybe it shouldn't have.
How about we just didn't do it then?
Right. That's a long way of just saying, like, maybe this shouldn't have happened. Maybe this was a mistake on everybody's part. And yeah, that's what this definitely feels like. It's a weird, fascinating mistake that, at the same time, it's not as fascinating as, say, like, a movie we covered on the show previously, Cats. Cats is, like, far more fascinating.
Cats is another level, like, crazy.
Right, Cats is at least, like, surreal and bizarre and is much more fascinating to watch. As opposed to Dear Evan Hansen is more once against the train wreck thing of just like, oh my god, something horrible's happening over there, but I can't look away.
It's a car crash on the interstate.
Yes.
For sure.
It's very much that, yes. But yeah, let's go ahead and get to our regular segment then, Adam, the Double Redo. Double Redo.
Double Redo. Double Redo. Double Redo. Double redo. Double redo.
That works. So the Double Redo is a segment we do every week in which Adam and I, related to the topic, go ahead and bring up a good movie we'd recommend to you all and a bad one we would steer you clear of. So I'm going first. So for my good choice, I have the film Slums of Beverly Hills, which is a 1998 film that stars a very young Natasha Lyonne as this young woman who was moved with her family after, they had their money problems. So they've moved to a different apartment off on the other side of Beverly Hills. They've moved around from place to place basically at a whim, as led by their dad, Alan Arkin. And it's this interesting little slice of life sort of story that I think is a great showcase for Lyonne. Obviously, she had acted in things before this, but I think it's a really great sort of very, especially like feminine focused coming of age story about her just trying to somehow make this work with like obviously her only sort of parental figure is her father, who has very interesting twists and turns along the way, and also her brother David Krumholtz, who is very much more like self-obsessed with like all his own shit. And I think it's a fun little movie. I'd recommend to anybody out there. It deals in some dark territory, but at the same time, there's a lot of like fun cast members in here, and I think it's a very interesting little cute sort of coming of age story that still deals in like darker material in an interesting way. And then for my bad, I have my alternate bad pick for this particular episode, Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, which, like I mentioned at the end of our last episode, was a movie that everybody praised, everybody loved around the time it came out. It was like, oh, it's a cute little indie darling movie, and I think it's fucking twee garbage, which, like, I usually like a good indie little, like, dramedy kind of movie. And this one
Can I ask you a question? What is twee?
Yes. Like, a movie that's very sort of, like, cutesy. as it were, but in like an indie way, kind of like the worst version of a Wes Anderson.
I
would say.
gotcha. Yep, I
Right.
gotcha. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes, and this definitely feels like that to me in terms of it follows this young man who's the me of the title, who's this film-obsessed high schooler who loves like making little recreations of certain art films that he loves, and basically imagine the worst version of like the Be Kind, Rewind, Sweeted movies. Like the most pretentious up your own ass kind of versions of those. And while he's making these movies with his best friend Earl, he ends up getting the attention of the titular dying girl, who is played by Olivia Cooke, who is a very good actress and has gone on to much better things after this. But this was sort of like her breakout. And she plays this young girl who is dying of cancer. And the entire time, it's so much of the main character, the Thomas Mann character, being so like flippant about her disease and everything, like her affliction, and being so like self-obsessed with like, no, we have to like film this thing or whatever, you have to join me, dying girl. And it's like this really creepy, upsetting sort of like budding romance, quote unquote, with the two of them, where it's just like initially like, oh, they're just friends, maybe there is more feelings, and then like by the time she ends up, spoilers for this movie that spoils its title, dies at the end of the movie, it feels just like, oh my god, I've learned my mistakes, even though we spent a solid like hour and a half of this dude being the worst piece of shit possible. And I have no sympathy for this dude. He has very much a sort of Evan Hansen style arc in that he takes people who are actually suffering and bends them to his whiny whims. Because fuck that guy. And fuck that movie.
Okay, so I have seen both of your movies. It has been a long, long time since I've seen Slums of Beverly Hills. I remember liking it quite a bit, but I've always kind of liked Natasha Lyonne. I think she's very interesting as a person and as an actress. But I haven't seen it forever to really comment on it, but I do remember thinking it's really solid. But thank you for reminding me of that one, because I might want to check that out again. And Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, I saw once. There was enough. It's pretty fucking terrible. It's another one of those movies to where I couldn't get into it because the lead is so incredibly unlikable. So yeah, pretty awful. Hell of a cast though. Great cast. Nick Offerman, John Bernthal shows up. I mean, it's really solid cast, but pretty awful. So for my two picks, my good pick is this really small little weird sci-fi slash horror slash post-apocalyptic movie that came out called Turbo Kid. It is just one of those movies that every time I see it, I just have such a blast. The actors are so fun in it. It's horribly violent and gory, but still kind of like whimsical and fun. There's an arm wrestling champion who's one of the heroes, and he's great. It's a super fun little movie. I believe it's out of Australia, and it's like an joint Australia New Zealand film. It's so fun, and it's very low budget. They stretch every inch of that budget, and it works for me 100%. You follow the main kid, Turbo Kid, the titular character, and just sort of how he becomes who he becomes through this horrible wasteland. And it's just super fun and cute and, like I said, violent and gory, but it's got a real sense of heart to the whole thing. And for my bad, now this one a lot of people might not agree with. One of them might be my co-host. I have Licorice Pizza, the newest Paul Thomas Anderson film. Um, like the acting's great, the cinematography's good, everything is, the music works. Bradley Cooper's super fun in it, in a real creepy dickhead way. Just nothing about it really connected for me, and I don't understand. I couldn't tell you why. Mainly, I guess if I had to, it's just that I don't think anybody in the movie is likable at all. So I'm trying to get invested in sort of these relationships that are happening and all that, and I don't really care. Like I didn't care about any of it, which again, some people don't need that for a movie, but I'm definitely one of those people kind of do, especially if I'm watching a coming of age sort of finding yourself slash teen romance slash the times are changing type of movie. It didn't connect for me or work with me at all, which is a shame because I normally like Thomas Anderson films, but Yeah, I don't know. This one was a big disappointment.
Well, I haven't seen Turbo Kid. That's one of those that I definitely had heard about a decade ago when it came out. It just has always been, on the watch list. Never have dug into it. I should probably do that sooner rather than later, especially after this hearty recommendation from Adam. But Licorice Pizza, yeah, I really enjoyed Licorice Pizza. Admittingly, I'm so glad that we're at least distant from like the awards sort of circuit of it, because the discourse around that movie was fucking draining. So fucking draining and awful, and I hated every single second I would see somebody have a take of it online, either good or bad. I was just like, can we stop talking about this fucking movie that I really enjoyed? But still, at the same time, I mean, I get it, because like I've heard a fair amount of people, despite like the big critical praise and Oscar nominations it got. In terms of audiences, it's definitely gotten kind of a bit more of like a mixed reception. I get it, but at the same time, what I just remember really liking about it is like I agree, no one's necessarily traditionally likable, I guess, quote unquote, but I think if you can at least make the situations interesting or engaging to me, I don't think I have to fully like side with a character, or like even multiple characters. Just like I found that relationship very interesting in terms of what it deals with. I don't want to go into full depth on that because that could be another fucking whole episode in of its own, talking about like the Alana Haim and Cooper Hoffman relationship. But I think they tread those waters in very interesting ways, and Anderson does a really good job, I think, with the whole cast. Like so many people bump in. Like I agree, like Bradley Cooper's really fun when he pops into the movie. But there's also like the woman who they go into for like the audition circuit, who's like so fucking great. I forgot what the actress is. She was recently in Werewolf by Night, but she's a great character actress. And there's a few other people that show up in here. Honestly, like my biggest issue with that movie is just the whole John Michael Higgins thing, which out of all the various discourse things that I, heard about that movie, I completely get it with that character and the whole like, racist angle that was going on. Like I get what Anderson's going for with that character, but at the same time, it feels very sloppily executed. And it can also just be like lifted out of the movie and you don't really lose much, especially about like the whole, this is a representation of like an asshole character in the 70s and they're backwards thinking. It's like there are plenty of other people in this movie who have that, where you don't need this John Michael Higgins like weird like 2-beat joke that doesn't even like have much of a payoff at all.
Yeah, it feels like 70s Saturday Night Live jokes. Like it's so tired, racist, dumb shit. Like it makes no sense.
Yeah, but otherwise, I like a lot of other elements about that movie. I think it's an interesting kind of hangout movie that I think isn't my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson necessarily, but also I liked it a lot more than, quite frankly, some of his other recent movies like Inherent Vice and stuff like that. But to each their own, Adam.
I didn't like Inherent Vice either.
Yeah. But anyway, let's go ahead and repeat our titles for everybody out there. For my good, I had Slums of Beverly Hills, and for my bad, I had Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl.
For my good, I had Turbo Kid, and for my bad, I had Licorice Pizza.
And submit your own coming-of-age redos to us at our various socials, which we'll go ahead and list off here as we get to the end of the episode, though stay tuned. We'll be doing our picking for next week at the very end of the episode. Though first, we gotta thank some people, like Chris Oliver for the intro and outro music used for our show. Listen to more of his music at chrisoliver.bandcamp.com. Thanks to Christian Thorlally for the artwork for our show. Follow him at Night of Water, that's night with a K, _of_water, for more of his great artwork on various socials. And thanks, of course, to our loyal Patreon supporters, patreon.com/DEDBpod, where for just $1 a month, you get to do stuff like vote in polls for topics and movies that we cover. And also, you get to listen to bonus podcasts, which we know this is coming out November 1st, so Halloween is come and gone. But you can still listen to the recently released bonus podcast episode about Midnight Mass, where Adam and I talked at length about that Mike Flanagan show, and we had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, because it's fucking perfect. And if you haven't listened to it, go listen to it. If you haven't seen it, go see it. And if you're not a Patreon subscriber, pay. And that way you can listen to it and then go watch it.
Yes. And if you're a Patreon supporter, you also get to vote. This week, we'll be putting out a poll for an upcoming episode where Avatar, The Way of Water is coming toward us, and the way we are going to tie into that particular movie's release is we're going to have a whole episode dedicated to Sigourney Weaver, one of our faves. We've been wanting to do this episode for quite a while, and we're quite excited
I thought it was going to be a Sam Worthington episode.
Oh, that's true. We could talk a lot about
he's
all
so
those good movies.
Good, yeah.
Right. Man on a Ledge stands here.
Man on a Ledge and Wrath of the Titans, baby. That's going to be our top episode.
For sure. But Adam, you have the good picks for that particular Sigourney Weaver episode, and people will be voting if they're a patron, between your two good choices. What are those two good choices they have to vote between?
My two good choices are Galaxy Quest and Working Girl.
The cult classic Working Girl?
Yep, yeah, because somehow that's what it is now.
Right, made $100 million, nominated for multiple Oscars.
Yep.
And it's a cult classic. One of those
Yeah.
obscure ones you gotta dig for. I have seen both of your good picks. I would be on board for either one. They're both very good.
Yeah, super fun.
And for just the $1, you get to once again listen to that bonus podcast or vote in that particular poll. We greatly appreciate every dollar that's given to us by our edgelords out there, as we like to call them.
Yeah, you guys are alright. Most of ya. Some of ya. Two of ya. Alright.
All 17 of you currently are great. That's...
Yeah, alright, yeah.
But for more of us, find us on Twitter and Facebook at DEDBpod. And you can also submit, feedback or double redos to us either there or on our email, doubleedgedoublebill@gmail.com, all spelled out. And for more of me, find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at NotTheWho'sTommy. And I also do some writing on places like marianithomas.wordpress.com and at film-cred.com.
And I'm on Instagram at Atom or Adam. That's ATOM_OR_ATAM. And I'm also on Letterboxd at Schwanson. That's SCHWANDTSON.
And for more of our audio antics, follow us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and other podcasting platforms. If you're listening on Talk Film Society, why not listen to all the other great shows on the network? But you can also dig into our archives and our Podbean main feed for like 200 episodes before we even joined TFS. And if nothing else, if you can't, support us monetarily on the Patreon, it's fine. Money can be tight. Even that $1 can be a lot for some people. We totally understand. But you can help us out for free, for no charge, by rating, reviewing, or sharing the show around to give us more visibility.
Yeah, keep doing it. We like it, fuckers.
Well, now, Adam, it's time we did our picking for next week's episode, which we do at the end of every episode. We have, a good and a bad pick that has to be decided on, and we switch up on the quality for that. One of us has 2 good, one of us has 2 bad. We assign numbers between 1 and 10 for them usually, and whatever the other person picks, where they're just like, oh, hey, I'm going to pick number 7, then the other person will say, oh, that's closest to number 6, which has this particular movie at its place, and so that gets us our good and our bad pick most of the time, though there's some things to consider. One, our patrons, like I mentioned earlier, they can vote on certain ones, and so they voted for my good pick, which is going to stay because it cannot be subject to the Godfather rule, which basically means Adam and I each have a veto in our back pocket that we have to use before next May. So if one of us hears usually the pick that's decided on, and we're like, you know what, I don't want to cover that particular movie, the person can say, actually, I'll take the cannoli. Thus, that choice is gone, when we have to go with whatever other good or bad choice is on the other side of things. And, to continue Revember, we're going to revisit a topic we haven't done since the very first year of the show. I believe it was the last episode of our first year of the show, where we talked about spoof movies in honor of the Al Yankovic story is coming out. And I'm curious about the one, Daniel Radcliffe continuing his ride of just doing whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah, I'm kind of here for that. Like, I don't know if it's going to be good or not, but hey, I can appreciate him just being like, nope, I want to be Weird Al in a movie. So, awesome.
Look, I mean, it's on the Roku channel, Adam.
Yep,
it's got to
which
be.
I like Roku, so fuck you.
Well, this is their first step into original programming, so I'm sure you're very excited by this prospect of them giving you new things.
Not really.
You have no loyalty to Roku, sir.
I'm a trickster.
Oh man, you're going to be running out of Roku City at this point.
Son of a bitch.
With this particular spoofs one, like I mentioned earlier, you aren't going to be able to use your veto on the good choice, which our patrons voted on from my 2 choices. We ended up with between Kung Fu Hustle and then the ultimate winner, which was the Abrams Zucker film Top Secret, which I'm very excited about myself. I think that one's very underrated.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one in a while, but I remember being quite fond of it. I know my wife really likes it, so that'll be fun to revisit.
Interesting, because you made a big deal about when I announced it was one of the choices that you didn't like it very much.
Yeah, I haven't. The thing is, compared to some of the other ones that have come out, it's a little bit more fondly remembered. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Well, you have the two bad choices, Adam. I have to pick number 1 and 10 for them, and this is very dicey territory. Given spoofs, they can be pretty legendarily, infamously terrible.
Okay, I will say before you even pick, just sort of put your heart at ease. There is no like disaster movie, epic movie, date movie, none of those.
Oh, no Friedberg Seltzer joints on
No.
your choices?
No.
Okay. You have some mercy.
Yeah, fuck that.
Because you don't want to also watch that bullshit again.
No, fuck no.
But okay. For your two choices, I'm gonna go with number 3.
Okay, at number 2, I have a movie starring an actor who I believe his newest movie on a Netflix exclusive is sort of a spoof. I haven't watched it, but I have the Marlon Wayne starring 50 Shades of Black.
Fuck me. Oh. Oh no. I mean, I haven't seen this one, but do I dare?
I mean, it's up to you, man. It is truly a double-edged sword.
You know what? Life's too short for that shit, Adam. I'm gonna take the cannoli.
Fuck! All right. At number 9, I have the not scary movie, not I'll always know what you did, not how shriek if you know what I did, blah blah blah, horror spoof, Stan Helsing.
Oh.
You got fucked, buddy.
Well,
Either way, you're in trouble.
I mean, either way, I was gonna be in trouble. I figured, but you know, at the very least, I believe Stan Helsing is that not one of the last Leslie Nielsen ones, right?
I don't know. I don't think he's in that, is he?
I believe it is. I think that was one of like the very last ones he was in.
Let's
before
put it
his
this way:
passing.
if he is, I don't remember it. So.
He is in Stan Helsing. I can confirm
Oh,
that. So
well.
at least, look, at least on our spoofs episode, we have a bit of Leslie Nielsen representation. I'll take that over 50 Shades
All
of Black.
right.
That'll be the one thing we're just like, well, did I completely waste it? We'll see. We'll see next time. But until then, everybody, it's time we, I don't know, did some wacky shenanigans while waving through a window.
Nope, not doing it. I refuse.